Gamescom interview, Chris Wilson and Jonathan. This guy even knows what he's going to talk about. This guy will know what Energy Shield is. This is going to be fantastic.
Lowepe, and I'm very grateful to got the opportunity to
I forgot they're in Germany.
be here and do this interview with you. And yeah, sorry for my bad English. My community hates me for my pronunciation. So
oh my gosh!
And it's my first interview as well. So I hope you can understand me.
Sure.
What is this? Is he a PoE? Hold on, is this a PoE guy? Lowepe? Yeah, he is. It's just a PoE. It's a PoE guy. Mine starter build. Tag 2. Ice Spear Totem Endgame. Vom Starter zum Barser. Mehr Profit us Ancestors Mechanik. Sieht für ein Bildwirschel Fireblade Vortex meet Spellblade. I love that it's Zeit für ein Bildschwächel Fireblade Vortex meet. Okay, anyways.
I have a few questions, but let's start with some soft questions. How you enjoyed your first days in Germany?
Well, Gamescom has been crazy so far. There are so many people, and it's been a back-to-back schedule of media interviews for us. And I'm looking forward to getting out on the show floor tomorrow to check out how the main Path of Exile booth is going. And Germany's lovely, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very nice. You know, like obviously the jet lag is a little bit annoying all the way from New Zealand. We're opposite time zone, but other than that, it's been very nice here.
You already saw the Kölner Dom, Cologne Cathedral?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
Very
okay,
nice.
Okay, so let's start with a few questions because I think your time is very limited. So I like to start with some Path of Exile 1 questions. Can you briefly explain what future is for Path of Exile 1?
Wait, before you do this to me.
When we are looking to the POE 2 release, so the next month, and after the POE 2 release.
So our intention with Path of Exile 1 is to carry on basically what we've been doing so far, which is quarterly expansions that introduce new challenge leagues, endgame changes, metagame changes, and we're very cognizant of the fact that because Path of Exile 1 is a separate product from Path of Exile 2, we don't need to allow Path of Exile 2's ongoing development to affect Path of Exile 1 necessarily. We can make sure that Path of Exile 1 keeps evolving in its own direction, and we have staggered our launches of leagues, so the Path of Exile 1 will occur sometime after each of the Path of Exile 2 launches, meaning if players want to, they can play the POE 2 expansion and then come and play a Path of Exile 1 expansion maybe 8 or 9 weeks later in the 13-week cycle.
We are about to enter a golden age of ARPGs next year. Okay, we have POE 2 beta. And keep in mind, the POE 2 beta, which comes out next year, June, that's the whole game. That is the real release of Path of Exile 2, right? Their release, it's going to be an entire league. They've already said as much in interviews. It's going to be an entire league's worth of time. There's probably not going to be a league mechanic, right? But it's going to be a Path of Exile 2 launch without a league, which is fine because POE 2 is already going to have so much new content, right? It's going to be everybody who wants in gets to get in. There's going to be a ton of players. There's going to be trade. It's going to be the POE 2 launch, right? But it's going to be a beta, and it's a really smart way to make sure all the kinks are figured out and all the bugs and whatnot are all fixed for the actual launch. But bro, the POE 2 beta, don't get it twisted. That's the real release date for POE 2 as far as we're concerned. Okay, we have that, and then we have a POE 1 league, and then maybe Diablo 4 gets their shit together. If they don't, then we've got Torchlight to play for a few weeks, right? We get to go from POE 2 to POE 1 to like a few weeks, you know, like a week of Torchlight, and then boom, we're back again, and the cycle will just repeat itself. Maybe in 2 years, Diablo 4 will get their stuff together. I did just see that they added a search function to their stash tabs, so they're getting there. They're getting there. We just need to give them like 3 or 4 more seasons, and they'll have a playable ARPG with maybe a functional endgame.
Yeah. Okay, so POE 1 and 2 will be separate games, and POE 1 has ruthless mode, so can we expect
oh my god, guys, chill. Just ignore this question. It's okay. Just ignore it. Just
yeah, more power creep, more broken mechanics.
Don't get
in
triggered.
POE 1.
Don't get triggered.
Or is it like we had it in the last few leaks, so that there are not so many very broken combinations?
Well, I think some degree of power creep is inevitable. It's very difficult for us to not introduce content to the game that helps increase the power cap of players. And while we're trying to be mindful of it, we know Path of Exile has been out for more than 10 years already. It's got more than 10 years of life left in it. We want to be careful to not...
God, I love Chris Wilson. Path of Exile 1 has more than... They are planning more than 10 years of content left for POE 1. I'm gonna be 40 fucking years old. I'm gonna be way over the hump, and I'll still be playing Path of Exile 1.
have too much incremental power creep year after year, but certainly it's inevitable that players will continue to gain more power over time and find more crazy ways to play.
Yeah. We have now received a few new support gems in 3.22. Can we expect more major numerical changes to skill gems in Path of Exile 1 in the next upcoming leaks?
So in terms of numerical changes, I mean, broadly speaking, we do of course want to buff underused things, but for many of the ones we have at the moment, it's not really a matter of just changing the numbers. For those ones, we've done experimentation, and where we can change the numbers in a quick way, we've done so. Many of the ones at the moment that need buffs need a bit more of a mechanical rework or a bit of taking back to the drawing. Doing it in various ways. For example, we've been, overhauling Ascendancy classes and so on occasionally doing gem reworks. But we found that in some cases it's easier to introduce new options than to change too much about how an existing thing works, because even though the thing may feel underused, it's still being used by some number of builds, and we have to be careful to not accidentally ruin them as we improve it for the other players.
So if you want to change one gem, you want to rework it, right?
To be a lot better, yeah.
Okay, I understand. What's about melee?
Well, melee is obviously something we want to feel really good. Now, the tricky thing, of course, is to fundamentally make melee feel really awesome. You need to do the type of extensive work that Jonathan's team have been doing for Path of Exile 2 for 5 years now. And so we're in a bit of a difficult situation in Path of Exile 1 because we do not have all the new character rigs and all of the significant amount of animation work that's gone into Path of Exile 2. We still want melee to feel good, but this is going to require more of a Path of Exile 1 twist on making melee feel good.
Bro, that's kind of exciting. That means there's gonna because he's saying, well, to make melee feel really nice, there's gonna have to be the new rigging. It's gonna have to be like some stuff that POE 2 is doing. It's gonna be a big project. He's like, but we'll do that with our own little POE 1 twist. That's exciting. It's not just gonna be like, Sunder does 50% more damage, so you could just use Sunder now.
You started to rework the acts in Path of Exile 1 and suddenly stopped it. Is there a story behind it, or was it never planned to rework all acts in Path of Exile 1?
So we make visual improvements where we can do, if there's something that's particularly old. Some of the earliest acts in Path of Exile have been there, like we started the work on that in 2007. There's some very old assets, so we want to improve those as we can. And we also did a pass of making the campaign more challenging and difficult. Like, we got through Act 1 and about half of Act 2, and that's something we were enjoying. I don't know if that's what the players want in terms of an act rework, is making it challenging and really scary. But we were enjoying that and the effect that it had on people's campaign playthroughs. There's a lot more we can do to finish that balance pass. It's just that it takes a very large amount of effort, and during that time we could, of course, introduce new skills or new metagame stuff that we think might be better received.
Okay, so one question I have asked myself a lot of times: how are league mechanics created? How can you describe the process? So is it?
Dude, poor Jonathan. I don't think he's been looked at this whole interview yet. He's just like look at him. He's just like sitting there chilling in the corner. He's just being ignored. This is just a conversation with Chris Wilson right now. Yeah, look at him. He's like squished. He's squished into the corner. This poor guy.
Sitting on a big round table and everyone throws in his ideas like a big brainstorming, or how does it work, and how do you get your thoughts from?
Honestly, there are so many different ways we come up with leagues. For a while, one of our favorite ways was to scroll through Netflix and try to find movie ideas that could become cool leagues. Like, it just inspires you. You know, you see a heist movie and think we could do that, for example.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Ocean's
I think
11.
it's the case with just about any kind of ideation.
It's
like
his turn.
Really, it's very hard to just sit down with with nothing and come up with ideas.
Yeah.
Like when I'm trying to come up with ideas for anything, I often just go to Path of Exile areas and walk around a little bit. And as I'm just looking at things, somehow it just inspires thoughts about other things. But yes, as Chris said, like you scroll down a bunch of movie posters, and like as you're looking at them, you're just coming up with things. And I think just it's a good way of brainstorming, just like looking at stuff in front of you and just letting ideas come from that.
Okay. How far away or how far ahead are leagues planned, set?
We usually don't plan further ahead than the one that we're currently working on. So, for example, at the moment we're working on 3.23 that's coming out, towards the end of the year. We have no idea what 3.24 is. Like, I could tell you zero facts about 3.24, but 3.23 I could tell you quite a lot about.
It's
Okay.
actually very important to do that, because if you plan things too early, then
Really?
you can't respond to what the players' needs are. You're just kind of making something for like people who are already 6 months out of date.
Yeah.
So it's kind of important to be able to respond quickly.
Okay, amazing. Is there a simple reason why popular leagues like Sentinel and Ultimatum have not made it into core game yet?
Based.
Generally speaking, it's because
Yes.
we don't yet feel that the core game is ready for them. Now, with Ultimatum, maybe the game is a bit more ready. With Sentinel, we don't necessarily know that it fits in the core theme of Path of Exile. Having floating laser robots following you isn't necessarily something we want in the dark fantasy, baseline game. But there are certainly elements of Sentinel we can wrap in. And for Ultimatum, I suspect you'll hear more news soon.
Okay,
Soon.
interesting.
Ultimatum
Last POE
soon.
1 question. In case Path of Exile 1 doesn't have many players in a few years because POE 2 is just bigger and I don't know. Have you given any thoughts to preserving the POE 1 experience like in a SSF offline mode or something like this?
I understand what you're asking for here. If Path of Exile 2 is massively
Yeah.
successful and every player moves over there,
It's
then
not
would we
happening.
still continue to run POE 1? But we would. It's very inexpensive to run an empty game server. Having said that, we do not expect it to be empty. We're going to produce some very high quality POE 1 content, and we're honestly expecting that users will jump between the two games quite a lot. So
There's really no reason to ever need to shut down Path of Exile 1 servers if that's what you're worried about.
Yeah.
Like that, I can't imagine a scenario where that would be something we'd choose to do, because as Chris just said, the infrastructure for it is entirely scalable with the number of players. So like if there's not many players, then it costs us nothing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like we're not worried about like having the service just running, and it uses the same backend as Path of Exile 2 does. So it's ultimately the same service. So it really, there's not really any fixed costs we need to be worried about. Like, so long as Path of Exile 2 is running, there's no reason not to have Path of Exile 1 also running on the same backend infrastructure at the same time. So
Yes.
I mean, for me, it's perfect. I can play Path of Exile 1, after a few months, Path of Exile 2, and go on all the year, all time. So, win. Yeah, okay. So let's move on to Path of Exile 2 questions. A closed beta is planned for June next year.
Yep. That's the release
how
of POE
closed
2.
it will be, so who can participate?
you should probably look at what we've done with past betas. Like if you look at 3.0 and how that was, there's probably quite a similar plan. But
Okay. That just confirms it, right? For the 3.00 beta, you just had to buy a supporter pack. What was it? Was it a six? What? I don't even think it was the $60 supporter pack. Wasn't it the 30? It's going to be like the $60 or $90 supporter pack to get in.
Specifics I don't really want to go into too much, but you'll certainly be able to get a chance to play if that's what you're wanting to do. There'll be ways, you know. So,
Okay, okay, nice.
That's really nice. So, boom, that's the launch, right? Keep it in mind. June is POE 2 launch as far as we're concerned.
And the scope of the beta, you can tell us anything about this?
So it's going to be the whole game. So there won't be. It's not just going to be
Yep.
one act or something like that. There's
Everything.
really no point to me of having a beta that isn't the whole game.
The
because half
campaign.
the point of it is to
The
test
end
things like
game.
the economy and so on.
The
And
bosses.
you can't know how that will fall out unless you've got the whole end game and everything in there.
Trade with players, the
you need to have
auctions.
the whole end game and everything. What won't be in the beta necessarily, or rather will probably come during the beta, is We're going to be integrating Path of Exile 1 League mechanics and things like that back in over time. We don't necessarily need every one of those to be in the beta when we start.
Just put
to be able
Legion
to
in,
get good
please.
feedback from that.
Just
but
put
we certainly
Legion.
need at least the campaign and the in-game and everything all through there to be able to see how things go. And of course, the beta is our last chance to actually, like make sure that all that stuff is good before.
I don't know why I said auctions. I just meant the trade site, right? So you can trade with people. But I'm thinking of like Torchlight Auction House.
Longer, like we can't exactly take items away once the beta has ended. So therefore, we have to make sure that we're getting all our economic testing correct during the beta period.
So, so we will have the chance in the beta to test the endgame.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, nice. Can you?
It's the
give
whole
us
game.
a little
That's the
teaser
launch.
for the endgame.
So we're not going to announce anything about it, but what I will say is that it's still ultimately going to be maps. But the whole in-game situation, I guess, like everything around that, we'll still have to announce. But ultimately, it's still going to be like the maps that in love with crafting of them and all that sort of stuff like that. That's going on. We definitely to us is fundamental DNA of Path of Exile and something that we want to make sure we're doing.
Nice, nice. So, Path of Exile 2 will be released on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, I guess. Do you talk or think about crossplay?
It's absolutely something that we're very keen to do. We still have to work out all this.
I'm honestly really surprised they don't have crossplay. It seems like something that's in almost every other game right now is crossplay. And for FPS, it kind of sucks because PC users with mouse and keyboard will always just stomp controller users unless you give controller users aim assist. And so it's really hard to like kind of find a nice middle ground. But for POE, man, like I don't think you have like a crazy huge advantage. Like it's not a PvP game. Like it doesn't really make sense to not have crossplay outside of the trade post or whatever that they have to make trading not like absolutely just AIDS for console players. Like that kind of sucks, man.
Stuff around it, but like crossplay I think would be very, very beneficial. So
slows down PoE PC patches, really?
Okay, nice. I
That's
think
rough.
this is a one point.
I guess if it slows down all the patches, then yeah, it probably wouldn't work. There's just no way it works. That's probably it, I guess. Yeah. That's the reason why Blizzard can't patch anything without a heavy delay. All right, yeah, I'm just thinking it would be nice to have just like more players in the economy, and then yeah, with console people, like dude, the console trade market sucks. It sounds awful after like the first 2 weeks of the league. It sounds dead, and like with these boss races, there is nobody who plays hardcore SSF on console. And so they just make it softcore SSF for any of the boss races. So it's just so goofy.
It's very important, especially for console players, to have one economy with the PC players.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
I think you managed to simplify the new skill system greatly in POE 2 compared to POE 1, but at the same time you don't reduce the complexity of it, so it's still complex.
Right.
And is it something you are trying to do with every mechanic, like crafting in Path of Exile 2?
So, I mean, basically, my opinion on complexity is that it's very important that things are easy to use and they don't put like roadblocks in your way. But it isn't necessary to remove depth. Like a new player gets turned off by when things are annoying, they don't understand what's going on. But I don't think there's anything inherently complicated about just having a lot of options.
Yep.
So I still like to provide a lot of options, which means there's a lot of interesting combinations you can do. But I don't see that to be the same thing as complexity. Complexity is whether the system is hard to use or not. And it's very interesting when you look at something like the skill tree, right? Like people open the skill tree and it's like this huge thing, and they look at that and think, oh, it's so complicated. But actually, there's nothing more simple to use than the Path of Exile skill tree, right? Like everyone immediately understands how to use it. It's just a question of what skills do I allocate, right? And as I said, I don't see that as complexity. So then when it comes to crafting, like you asked, once again, like I think that Path of Exile, due to the fact that we've added so many crafting systems over time and things have kind of accreted like this, it means that crafting in PoE 1 is sort of complicated because everything's like a little bit, the way everything works is not really consistent. There's a few issues there. So I think it's possible to make it not complicated while not removing any depth.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm hoping to achieve with PoE 2, is we still have lots of options, there's still lots of things to think about, but it's still easy to use, like easier to use than it is in PoE 1. And that's kind of, I guess, the overall view.
Easier, but not less depth.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
All right,
So the gameplay shown at ExileCon looked too slow for many players.
dude, this guy's
I guess
questions.
you know,
This
the feedback.
guy's question. He's just home run after home run. What about Melee? PoE 2 gameplay looked really slow. Everybody hated it.
Can you take away some of the players' fears that they don't want be able to shred hordes of monsters?
Are you gonna abandon Path of Exile 1? What happens if everybody stops?
In Path of Exile 2 in short time, or will Path of Exile 2 be just that, so it's much slower?
I mean, as I said, I guess on this issue, I guess I just don't see things the same way. Like, my goal is not to make it so that the game is slower. The goal is to make it so there's actually interesting interaction between skills. As long as we're achieving that, then it's okay. So in the Druid demo, we sort of took care to do some sort of higher level gameplay. There's a lot more going on. If you have a look at like rampaging around, things like this, the stuff you can do, you can certainly be very fast. But at the same time, I don't want it to turn into is the whole like, you know, like 200 projectiles a second like kind of thing that you get where there's just like the screen isn't.
Path of Addiction. Why remove movement skills? They didn't remove movement skills. Number one. Number two, you can't have like you got to keep it a buck, man. You can't have interesting boss fights if you get to teleport across the arena all the time, right? Like to have a boss fight. Like every boss would just have to have huge AoEs everywhere, and it just becomes no. Shut up, Toad. Stop. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. All it becomes is a bunch of circles that you don't stand in, right? That it just becomes like lots of AoEs everywhere, right? Shut up about WoW. Shut up, okay? Shut the fuck up about World of Warcraft, okay? Yeah, WoW bad, WoW bad. It just becomes like, don't stand here, don't stand there, and then just a bunch of mechanics where it's just like, all the boss fights are just positioning. You can't have that, right? Not in PoE, where it's just like, you're like, it's just becomes so annoying to balance around like melee, caster, whatever. If everything is just like AoEs, then every boss has to have like AoEs that aren't around the boss. I don't, you know, like I don't see it. I think you can have much more interesting boss fights without spammable teleports all the time. And also, hey, motherfucker, you don't get to teleport constantly in World of Warcraft, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but Demon Hunter only gets to dash 2 times, and then you get 2 dashes and a jump, and that's like the peak. That's the peak, right? I think warriors get, what is it, something heroic jump or something, right? It's not like you could just shield charge. Shut up. I'm not wrong. You can't. World of Warcraft doesn't have shield charge around the whole arena and then flame dash. I'm not wrong. I know for a fact World of Warcraft doesn't have you being able to shield charge around every raid.
Tripolar bear.
All right, WoW raids don't look like everybody doing this around the whole spot. No, you're like, you have like your one movement ability. Maybe the warlocks put a gate down. Your warrior, you have the whatever slam, right? You get to use like your one thing, and then you have a little bit of assist from other people's.
Highly covered, you can't see what the hell is going on, like this kind of stuff. So it doesn't need to be slow in order to not have this kind of thing going on. And honestly, this kind of stuff makes the game very unapproachable. Like when you see on a stream like this kind of thing, it's like, what the hell even is going on in this game? Like I don't know, you know. Like I want to make sure there's actually some visual clarity and some interesting fun mechanics and things like that. Yeah, as I said, I don't think the game needs to be slower. Is not the word I would use for that. Just more like I guess. There's stuff, you know, there's things you can
it's like saying Elden Ring boss fights are uninteresting because you have to move you have to walk your character out of the way of some moves, or you have to dash. It's like, oh no, why this Elden Ring sucks. I can't just, and then I have to walk, and oh my god, and I can't just like teleport. Why can't I just teleport out of the way every time? Yeah, shut the hell up.
Respond to.
Elden Ring's boring. That's 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes. Anybody else think Elden Ring is boring? Oh, by Bozo? That's 5 minutes for you too. Anybody else? Does anyone else think Elden Ring's boring? Bad example. You can roll constantly and have iframes. What do you... There's a roll. Kirsch. There's a roll in POE 2 that makes you evade 100% of attacks. Okay? There's a roll in POE 2. What are you talking about?
You don't. The boss doesn't melt in 1 second, but instead... But you can still do certain...
Not all... Yes, all attacks. Yes. Okay, wait. No. Wait. Not the AoE ground things, okay? But all the attacks. You have attack evade. PoE roll doesn't have a cooldown. No, what do you mean it doesn't have a cooldown? No! Kirsch! We watched the gameplay yesterday, Kirsch! He said there's no cooldown. You just hold space. Elden Ring has stamina. It's like you're literally just you couldn't be more wrong saying the PoE roll has a cooldown and Elden Ring doesn't. Elden Ring has a soft cooldown of running out of stamina. PoE has no stamina and no cooldown. You just hold space and you can roll forever. What are you talking about?
Combos. And yeah, as I said, the stuff you just saw with the druid, I'm hoping you can see, some of the stuff that we can do there.
Yeah, for all watching this interview, we got this druid demo, and yeah, it looked much faster for me personally. So, yeah. So last question for this interview, because I think we are a little bit short in time. Trading is a big part of Path of Exile 1 and probably Path of Exile 2 as well. Are you planning on somehow integrating trading more into the game, like with a overlay or something like this, or?
Not necessarily. Honestly, I feel like a website is actually an easier way to search for items. Like anything we'd put in the game client is likely to be less actually user-friendly. But there might be a few other changes we can make to sort of improve things just with regard to the flow of that stuff. But if we do that, I suspect that those changes would be in PoE 1 as well. They're kind of platform things rather than game things as far as I see them. But ultimately, it's still going to be like, similar things where you have, public stash tabs and things like that. You can search them online and then be able to do some trade stuff after that. So yeah, that's still out.
Websites more user-friendly than an in-game client cope? I 1 Brazilian% agree. I 1 Brazilian% agree that having it on the site is so much better than having it in-game. Because we get to, like, in-game, it would literally just have to be a browser in the game, right? And at that point, sure, you can have the browser in the game. I like this right here. I like this user interface, right? We have all of this. We can type. We have all these random things. This would be so annoying, right? To have to put in the game and have it pop up, whatever. Okay, they could do it. They could totally do it. But you know what they couldn't do? They couldn't have multiple tabs, right? You couldn't have multiple tabs. You couldn't have links. You couldn't have a browser link that you save between leagues. I can't have a jewel search string that I can copy and hyperlink in my Maxroll article. I can't do that if there is a UI for the trade in the Path of Exile game, right? Like, it has to be browser. If I want to share my jewel trades, if I want to share the good timeless jewel seeds, if I want to show you blah, 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 and link you an example of a good trade link for you to find boots, it would have to be this crazy convoluted thing where it hyperlinks from a website, open like a Discord server channel exception, and then it goes in game. There's no way. And these trade links, we can save them between leagues. It's so nice. They auto update to the newest league, right? I have trade links. To this day that still are pathofexile.com/trade/exchange/metamorph. I have /metamorph links from 3 fucking years ago. I have trade links I've been using since Metamorph League to find my jewels and random shit, okay? It's so nice. That is so much better.
If you know what I mean.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay, I add one last question, if it's okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about gold in Path of Exile? So, Do
He's
you
just
need it
every
in endgame?
question.
Well, I'm hoping not. The intention behind the balance of gold is that it's something more for early game, fixing problems, using vendors and so on early, and then as you get towards the end of the game, you're going to be wanting to use other currency items and trading for other currency items. So I don't imagine, and I don't particularly want players to be trading gold between each other. It's more that they'll be using chaos. They'll still be using chaos and things like this for that kind of trade, and the gold will be more for just vendors and stuff like that.
Okay. Thank you for the questions or for the answers of my questions. Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you a very, very good stay and a better flight home later this week. Okay.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. That was Lowepe, Path of Exile Gamescom interview with Chris Wilson and Jonathan Rogers. Thank you for that fantastic interview. Thank you, Lowepe. Get some claps for Lowepe because he knocked it out of the park. Every question, he actually just went straight to it. He's not like, oh, geez, I wonder what they're going to think. I hope they don't get mad at me if I ask them about gold, melee, abandoning Path of Exile 1, POE 2 looking slow. He was just like, he's in it. He's in it. He asked about the beta. Now we know for sure. We got a confirmation. He got us a confirmation that the POE 2 beta is the full game. We already knew that. Another confirmation there in English, not from the Peter Polish interview. That could maybe be a translation thing. Okay, boom, English, plain English. We know for sure it's the whole game. And now confirmed, we're getting in with the supporter packs. He said, just look at what we do for 3.0. That was 500 lifetime spent in Path of Exile supporter packs, or you just buy the newest supporter packs. All right, so thank you for that, Lowepe. 10 out of 10 interview. Couldn't have done it better myself.